Hacking the audio. We're in. We've got audio. Oh, here comes video. Okay, we've got video. Okay, let's go. Welcome to the 800's. We're back.
Yeah, thanks for hacking us back in there, Adam, and especially Alan, because we were definitely having some hardware and software issues. Glad to have you back. And once again, your host with the probably least amount of computer skills, me, Alex, and then your host with more skills, Adam.
Not hacking skills.
and our tech man with the most skills, Alan. Thank you all for your patience, and I'm not sure how far we got, but we might as well just redo the plug. So why don't you give him a go, Adam?
Incompetech plays music that we like. You should like it too. Fearless First was the song that was playing before our beautiful faces and melodic voices showed up on the stream. If you want to hear more that Incompetech has to offer, check out incompetech.filmmusic.io. They're cool. We have a YouTube channel. You should check that out too. We post nerdy things. The link is below the video. And finally, Patreon. This is where we left off last time. Patreon is a thing that we have. You should join it so you can tell us what to read next. $2 a month gets you a vote for the next book on our list. So yeah, check it out. Over to you, Alex.
Sorry, I was just reveling in such amazing advertisement for our wonderful services. Anyways, this week on the 800's, we will be discussing our final book of 2021, Daemon by Daniel Suarez. This techno-thriller begins with the murders of two programmers working for the gaming giant Cyberstorm Entertainment. When the murderer confesses soon after, he's revealed to be the founder of Cyberstorm itself, Matthew Sobel. There's one problem, though. Sobel is dead, and he's unleashed a cyber demon that has already begun enacting his vision for the world. The question that remains is no longer who, but why, how, and what's next.
Or is it even there for yeah, if this is your first time joining us, I'll give you a quick rundown of how this stuff works. If you guys have a topic you would like to discuss or a question you would like answered by others in the chat or by Alex and I, go ahead and post that in the chat at any time, and we'll pick it up and throw it out there. Otherwise, Alex and I will come up with things to talk about, and we will pose questions to you guys for you guys to answer in the comment section. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We ask stuff, you guys ask stuff, we answer, you answer. It's a good time.
And as always, just our quick reminder and disclaimer that this is a show geared towards adults. We cover adult topics, which very much came up in this book. And while we try not to swear too much, it does happen on occasion. So bring younger kids into this at your own discretion. And also, we're trying to create a fun and supportive community in which people can share their interests and hobbies over at DM's table. So, and the 800's as well as a part of that. So please be nice for the holidays or fuck off forever.
For and ever.
Oh, I should just read my mug.
Or my mug. Or my bookmark.
God damn it. They can't read.
All right.
My lighting is not set up to display anything at all. But you have to be able to see my pretty face, right? And otherwise, what's the point of the stream?
Definitely not to talk about books. That's not what we do here.
Not at all. Not once ever. All right.
That thought, what were your first impressions?
So my first impressions of this book was like, man, does it hit the ground running. There's so much going on in this that, like, admittedly, when I started reading this book, I read it super early because we had like a lot of extra time to do it, and I semi-rushed. I read it a little bit distracted the first time around, and then when I was like, oh, I'll come back to it and remember stuff, and I'm like, holy shit. Like when I reread it, I was like, there's so much more here going on than I even remembered, and I thought I was paying reasonable attention enough, and so it was weird. Like I had all the time in the world to read this, and I read it twice, and I still felt a little rushed with it. I wish I'd have given myself a little more time to like take it a little more seriously in the reading, but it was still a fun read, and it wasn't. This is probably the most heavily like purely story-driven book that we've read to this point. Like I was not super invested in like basically any of the characters up front, but like the story is compelling.
Yeah.
What about you, Adam?
Now, this is a second round read for me. I read this years and years and years and years and years and years ago.
We old is what he's saying.
This book came out, I think, 10 years ago. So it's not like a super ancient book, but
I think 15 now.
15? Well, either way,
2006, 2008, something like that.
It came out in the 2000s somewhere, so it's not like Dune or anything, but it was definitely closer to the release date when I first read this book. So, but yeah, I really like how it jumps right in. It's like murder on page 2 or something. Really excites you, really draws you in. Does a good job of painting the picture of what kind of world we're in. It's about technological companies, people who have computers and stuff right off the bat. So, great way to start it. And it hits just as strong today as it did 10 years ago. So, good stuff.
All right, it looks like V.S. Drake 8 times through, man. That I can see why. Like having read it twice in the span of like less than a month. I would agree, V.S. Drake. Part of what makes it so compelling is the level of plausibility of it. I would say compare it to a lot of stuff that would come out of. Like Michael Crichton is probably the most comparable author that I personally know, but I would say this is even more plausible because, like, honestly, even though this is 15 years old, all the stuff in it has only become more plausible the more technology has advanced.
Are you there? Am I there? Did I lose Alex? Are you still there?
Oh, I am?
Okay.
Yeah. I'm there.
I think my internet decided to take a poop for a quick second.
Oh, you're back. We're back a dinosaur story. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely. I'm not an expert in hacking by any means. I think the furthest I've ever gone is just running an app that tries to brute force Wi-Fi signals. So I'm nowhere near the level of what's his face who sits in his car and hacks.
Greg?
Greg, yeah. But I think this definitely has a realism feel to it. That is definitely a plausible thing, especially because like all that we're talking about is pre-programmed instructions. It's not, he didn't create an AI that had to do this. He created just a program that said, if this happens, then do this, which is much more, in my opinion, is much more plausible than trying to come up with something that can think and decide on its own what to do better than what a human could do in the scenario.
So very different than your iRobot or Skynet type of thing. This is a pre-programmed attack. I will say this, the thing that's the least plausible is just how thorough the contingencies are. Like, I get this dude was supposed to be some hyper genius with, the billions of dollars to make it potentially happen, sure, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because we only read the first half of the book, but it felt a little like all the cards were in the antagonist's hand at all times, and there's almost nothing that could be done on the other side. And I get that's part of the tension that it's trying to bring, but there wasn't even really a glimmer of them having any hope about doing anything against any of this, especially as you go on and you realize that there's a lot of setup leading to any given trap that gets laid. And it just figuratively and literally ramps up to the end with those with those ninja bikes or whatever. So yeah, it does feel a little railroaded in the first. Yeah, it does feel a little railroaded in the beginning, and that's probably my biggest gripe with the storyline. But I'm giving it a little bit of a benefit of the doubt because this is part one of a 2-part series, and I'm just hoping that that the potential that is there with in particular Phillips and who's the Russian dude that hacker John Ross, that's the one.
Oh, he was Russian?
Apparently, yeah. I think so, right? Wasn't he? Yeah. I thought that was part of the reason why they got all suspicious of him, right off the bat.
He was
because
definitely...
he's a contractor work with no real address who was and they kind of slyly threw the Russian thing in there.
Yeah, it does say a Russian hacker. I thought it was some other country. He was definitely a foreigner who was raised in the States, but
yeah, I mean, I thought it was just part of the reason. I thought that was just one of those things they casually threw in there. That's just we have a reason to suspect you because Russia. I thought, that's why it stuck with me. And as I'm looking at Wikipedia, because honestly, that's another thing. It was sometimes tough to keep track of who was who in this. So having the Wikipedia page just to have the names and a quick, oh, that's who I'm that's who I'm reading about, just to check in.
This book is probably my worst example of coming up with my own names for people. I'll give you 2. So John Ross was Whose Line Is It Anyway? That was my name for him. And the detective who led the the second force in the house, I called him Burn Victim Barbie.
Oh no. Oh, poor Seaback. Oh boy. That's fucking dark, man. No, but V.S. Drake, thanks for pointing that out. The government didn't know. It was just later that that was just my association. It wasn't as bad as fucking Burn Victim Barbie, though. Holy shit, dude. Thank you for that.
Let's move on to more topical discussion instead of just our random ramblings about funny things in the book.
It's not even funny things in the book. It's funny things in your head. But yes.
Whoa. You don't know what's in my head. Well, except for the two things that I mentioned.
Brain matter. Anyways, did you have a topic queued up, or did you want me to toss one out there?
I've got a topic. So, was the demon a protagonist or antagonist?
Neither.
What was he? It.
The demon is a tool. It was neither the protagonist or an antagonist because it's not sentient. Aha! Subverted. But I mean,
I will end this chat right now, Mr. T.
Pity the fool who does not recognize semantics. So I get what it's trying to do, and it was set in motion by somebody though who had a very by any means necessary attitude, and towards like recreating the world in a way that would in some ways be more equitable, but it was definitely an antagonist because of that by any means necessary attitude, and it specifically is moving towards what is effectively a selfish goal for the creator, despite him being dead, which is a weird set of sentences to string together, but I definitely saw it as an antagonist, particularly at the end when it just starts straight up fucking murdering people. Like, but well, I mean, technically it's doing it at the beginning, but you can presumably ascribe that directly to Sobol. But this thing is actively setting up a network of agents. It gives them a means to communicate. It gives them the missions, and then it hacks into, self-driving cars, motorcycles, people's personal accounts and things. And I don't know, like that sounds pretty antagonistic to me. But I also get like the end goal can make it seem like a potential protagonist, maybe, but I don't know, because we never get its perspective. We get Sobol briefly, but kind of just in little snippets, and it's all pre-recorded, which is hard to treat that like a protagonist,
Mm-hmm.
So what about you?
I would argue that he is both. Well, Sobol is both. If you want to go the technical route. This story is definitely about the demon and the end goal of creating a new societal order, which makes it the protagonist. It's also an antagonist based upon its attacks upon people to accomplish it.
I mean, kind of, but I think for me, what really doesn't sell it as a protagonist is the lack of perspective from that character, and most of the characters that we do have actual perspective from are the essentially the task force assigned to stopping the Soulwall and the demon. Because aside from Greg, and like at the very end, we get like that Charles Mosley guy, the drug dealer, who's like the champion of the demon program.
Mm-hmm.
Like aside, and that may change in the next book. Don't get me wrong, but in this one, I don't think we get enough perspective from that side for it to like fully move into antagonist. Maybe. What's the term I'm looking in here? I think I know what it is. Just give me a second. I think almost like a weird deuteragonist. Like it doesn't quite achieve the fullness of a protagonist for me, but B.S. Drake, I did get Ready Player One vibes from this, especially when they kept dipping into like Sobol's games to try and get try and get clues about what was happening next and how to stop it and how to infiltrate it. And then, they basically had to like literally find out lore about Sobel to like try and find clues, which is, yeah, it's much bloodier and, a lot more realistic than Ready Player One, though.
Ready Player One is like the video game version of Daemon.
Well, it's also set in far future, not like essentially present. Well, not that far future, but far enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, that little scene at the end, I agree, does come up where Seebeck's just like, I'm not dead yet. I'm getting better.
I felt more like it was oh fuck, I'm not dead yet.
A little bit, but let me have my Monty Python reference, man. How many of those are we gonna get in this?
Snooze.
Ready Player One came out in 2011.
That sounds right.
All right. I thought it came out way earlier than that, or unless you're talking about like the movie, but like
I think the book. Yeah, the book.
Oh no, the movie came out in like 2018. Duh, I'm dumb.
Did Daemon come out? We gotta find out. It's important for reasons. 2006.
No. Yeah, so Daemon. I can imagine Ready Player One taking something from this though. Like, there's one of the things I thought that was actually kind of similar is like pacing. Is like Ready Player One has a lot of that diving in first, like head first, using real life and virtual clues and like stringing them together fairly seamlessly, which I thought was one of the more fun parts of this book. I actually really enjoyed it. And I think this honestly was a bit of a masterclass in how to create a book where you can create a story that's so compelling that you don't need to be super invested in the characters to really go along with it, because you can, and in part it's because of that reality aspect where you can be like, I could see myself like this actually happening. Like I can relate to the story because it's that plausible, and it's something that is potentially like legit scary. Like, can you imagine? Like, think about how connected things are now compared to like 15 years ago when this book was written. All the security cameras that are everywhere. All like how much of people's homes are connected to any digital devices like for heat, air, paying bills, and everything. And holy crap! Like, this is like I said, it's almost more viable now than it ever was.
Yeah.
The only thing that's different, though, is we also take cybersecurity more seriously than ever. It's not I think like he opens up the book saying something along the lines like where Greg's bragging about how easy it is to like go hack into like what like old rich people accounts because they don't give a shit about cybersecurity. I guarantee you anybody who makes over six figures or has like 7+ figures saved up gives a shit about cybersecurity. I don't give a fuck how old they are. They know and they do. And like that's Suarez not only did his homework, but he spent 10 years in corporate IT before writing this book. The dude's an expert, but man, did he use it well to like really make this real. Which I thought was pretty cool to find out after the fact. Yes, home networks are weak via Strict, we know. We are vulnerable. I think we may have lost Adam again. That, or he has become the most stoic person I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. So Suarez apparently was in. Suarez was actually apparently in corporate IT, like consulting, even. So, like, he very much lines up with the John Ross character. What do I do with my hands? No, I'm kidding. But I actually found that out after the fact, and I was immediately connected him to John Ross, and I think that might be why John Ross was probably one of my more favorite characters in all of this. In fact, I want to put that out there for the chat because there was a wide array of characters in this, and any number of people could have identified with any number of them. But who was your favorite character or favorite main character in this book? All right, and uploaded. All right, so hacking. So hold up. I think we might have a way to get Adam back in on here. Sorry again for all the technical difficulties, folks. We're really trying hard. Yeah, we got audio but not visual there, Adam. Bah humbug. All right. So we don't need to see you. I'm pretty enough for the both of us. Kidding. And we got visual now. Thank you. So
sorry guys.
So we're talking, who is your favorite main character, like, if you had one?
That's a good question. Because there were a lot of characters I would classify as main, because really there wasn't a lot of focus on one single person besides
exactly
the demon entity.
Exactly why I asked that question. Is like there's a lot of them, and I could see how many people could connect with any given one. So I'm curious, who was the one that stood out to you?
Do you have a favorite while I'm thinking about it?
Yeah, so for me, and I talked about this a little bit while you were bouncing around, Ross was my favorite, and I think in part I connected with him the most because in retrospect, I was connecting with what I believe was Suarez's, like Daniel Suarez, his connection with John Ross, because Suarez was in corporate IT consulting, just like John Ross was, and that character felt like it was the deepest, most fleshed out of the main characters. Everybody else has a thing, but they felt not fully one-dimensional, but quasi one-dimensional. There's not a lot of depth to any of them except arguably him, and I guess Greg, but he's more of a like well, he's not even that much more. He's just super fleshed out because he's a sociopath, and you have to lean into that. But yeah, that was my personal favorite. I like that he was kind of like that guy who just kind of got thrown into the middle of the shitstorm just for being good at what he does.
Yeah.
and that bewildered, but like the bewildered and he was competent, but not like insanely over competent, like some of those types of like, oh, I got thrown into this mess and I'm not just going to rise to the occasion. I'm going to do superhuman feats of like the best computing and hacking ever. No, he's very realistic, and he actually like grounds a lot of the story, I feel like, and that's what I liked about him.
What I liked about him was you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like at the beginning he was like, dude, can you just fucking take me home? Like, I don't want to be here. And then in the middle part of the book, he was the only one fighting the demon still. And he was like, I've got to convince people to fight this demon. And I was like, you were the one who didn't want to. It was kind of a cool turn. It was a nice growth on his part, I think.
That's actually a really good point. Is like I think he was competent, and that's where the competence comes in. He's competent enough to realize that, like, yeah, in the beginning, I just want to go home, but like he realizes how big of a threat this is, and he's willing to fight for it. Is he like very successful? Not particularly in this book, but but he tries, and that's nice to see. So, was he your favorite then, or was there somebody else? Or
I'm kind of with V.S. Drake on Mosley. I really liked that the demon kind of helped him understand that he wasn't just done with life, and that was just kind of him accepting his situation in prison, like almost more lying to himself about, yeah, I'm content with how my life went, like this can be it, I'm cool with it. But then when he gets his second chance, he goes, actually, I'm not cool with it. I want to do right by my son. I want something out of my life. I want my life to have meaning. I felt like that was a cool turnaround, and I don't know, an interesting development in his personality.
I would tend to agree. I'm still kind of like holding my judgment for Mosley because, relatively speaking, he comes in kind of late, and I see the potential for a great character, particularly if it follows through on the the potential that is there for that kind of clash between your average characters of like John Ross and Detective Seebeck and this new system, because I feel like those three like characters have the potential to create the most, like, the biggest philosophical conundrum for the reader is like, who do I root for?
Yeah.
And and so I just haven't quite seen enough of that from my personal taste. But again, it's just a matter of, like, we haven't had a lot of exposure. There's a lot of potential there, but just for this particular book. But I also haven't read the second one, so I wouldn't know where he goes, and I wouldn't know how to appreciate that. But the rest of the characters outside of like those three and the one that you love to and the ones that you love to hate, like Greg is the sociopath. Like, he's meant to be like just essentially the purest, like I think he's the manifestation of the evil that can come from the demon. And then on the other side, you've got the major, who's just a major pain in the ass. But
so was there any particular character that you didn't like? I should rephrase, not like Greg, where he's a despicable human being, but like just in general, a character where you felt like they were out of place or just uninteresting.
I didn't particularly care for who's the reporter lady.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. No, I remember. This was my association was Mrs. Anderson. So yeah, her, like, I get that she was basically supposed to be like the propaganda wing of the, like, she was the one potentially spreading the message or sussing out information that needed to be diverted or whatever, and like to help like kind of lay this foundation for when the new system is set up, give people a reason to actually be invested in it. And her character just felt like I don't know, it's weird because I know she's supposed to have been manipulated. Like, that's the whole point. But she kind of felt like very pushovery and a little bit whiny. And like, I don't know. I thought it could have been done. That character Crowley could have been done better, and I wouldn't necessarily have to like her in the way that I like, say, Ross. But you could have leaned into it more and made her more of the character who, at least make her more sympathetic. I was never sympathetic towards her. That was the thing. Is like, I know she's being manipulated, but I just never really cared that much.
Somebody that annoying, it's hard to be like, man, I care that you're gonna get shit on later.
So V.S. Drake thinks they all fit, and I agree that she fits in the story. I just think there were better ways to write that particular character to still make her fit. That's all.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with V.S. Drake about like every character was either interesting and had a well-developed personality or served a very specific purpose, like Angie. And I mean, as far as Angie goes, right? Like, we see her enter when she gets fired from her job, and then she does the stories about making the demon seem like a hoax, and then she's gone.
Yeah, and again, like you said, that for me, this is what I mentioned is it's a minor gripe because like the most of them, like you said, do fit a purpose or they are well developed enough to help move the story along, and it's a really compelling story that wouldn't necessarily be moved along as well if the characters weren't solid. Like the characters still have to be solid. There's none of these where it was like, we've read books before where we've liked characters but not liked the story or the book book nearly as much as we like the characters. But this one is where the story shines, but it does take solid characters to make that work. And every one of them is pretty solid. My gripes about Angie were minor. Like, it's like one of those fairly nitpicky things that, like, yeah, it could have been done better, but she served her purpose. I don't know if we're supposed to even sympathize with her or if she's just kind of this tool to move the story along, but
yeah. So V.S. Drake asks, do you think Angie will be destroyed by the demon?
I don't think she'll necessarily be destroyed, but I think if anybody gets thrown under the bus, it'd probably be her.
That's kind of what I'm wondering in terms of book 2 is like, okay, he's successfully managed to usurp the throne, so to speak, and create this societal order. Is there going to be any forming of the order? Like, is it going to be just the people make it what it is that it is now, or is the demon going to have a second side where it says, okay, now that I've created this society, I'm going to start shaping it, cutting out the parts that don't belong anymore, like Angie and her corrupt storytelling, and Greg and his extreme violence. So I think, to answer V.S. Drake's question, I think, yeah, she's going to be essentially weeded out in the long run.
Yeah, and by your definition, including like ruin of some kind, I do think that this is not going to end well for her. Or if it does end well, it's only because she's saved by one of the other characters, but not for lack of trying on the demon's part. Like it's hard to imagine this character that is already doing something that, like, if you want a new world order, you don't build it up. You might use characters like this for the revolutionary aspect, but if you're supposed to be changing stuff, this isn't what you build this new world order from, it's oh, good, your headphone is moving. You went stoic there, Adam. Wasn't sure if we lost you again.
Sorry.
So I would agree. I think she probably does wind up being like pushed aside in one form or another, whether that's ruin, death, or heck, it might even be imprisonment for all we know.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think the big question is though, the demon makes a big deal about following through with its promises often, like especially with what's the jail guy that I said I like a lot?
Mosley.
Mosley.
Yeah.
It makes a big deal about, the demon follows through on its promises with him being able to grab his son and set him up for better life. Mr. Mosley. Sorry, I just had to say it because the audiobook says it phenomenally well every single time. Mr. Mosley. But no, so I think the question is, what did the demon promise Angie? And would the demon lose credibility if it then cast her aside?
Well, I was going to ask the exact same question. Is like, what is the actual promise that it made her? Because really the only thing we've seen it promise is that if it follows the stories that it tells her to and does what it says, she will gain notoriety, more or less. That was the promise. And that doesn't necessarily mean anything good. I feel like this is like the old, like not like the genie from Disney, but like if you've ever heard any, like the monkey's paw type of thing, where yeah, you get your wish, but it comes at but it's like twisted in some way, like you'll be famous because you're gonna be the first one that I throw under the bus in front of the whole new world order. Well, I mean, that's a good point, BS Drake, is that the demon has already cast a ton of people aside. Like heck, when it's interviewing Greg, it specifically asks, "Would you be willing to like throw under? Would you be willing to like command underlings and potentially throw them into harm's way or death or watch them die?" And he's like, "Yep," and that's how he passed the test. Which I think says a lot about the moral structure, at least of this like revolutionary bit, anyway.
You fine with getting others killed? You cool with that? Stepping over other people's corpses to rise to fame? You fine? You good?
You fine with being a monster? Yeah. All right.
Are you the demon behind the demon? Yeah.
Well, yeah, BS Drake, the demon is absolutely prepping for a fight. It's laying a foundation for revolution and a worldwide one at that. And you know, pretty much any revolution is born of some level of blood spillage, and there isn't really a lot of ways around that. So I'm gonna put that in the chat though. But Adam, what did you think of Greg? Since we got that from BS Drake.
Yeah, that's a good question. He is um, he knows what he wants out of life, and he takes it kind of person. He has no care in the world for others' feelings or well-being. He is a despicable human being, and apparently highly driven.
I thought he was uh yeah, VS Drake does mention that the elephant in the room, Suarez could have showed Greg to be evil without the rape scene. I think that is aged really poorly. Um, I think he wanted to establish early on that this was not a character that was ever going to be redeemable. And that is a very quick way to make sure that a character will never be redeemable. This isn't a guy who plays too many video games and has been distancing himself from the shitty things that he does to the point where, oh, like he is dissociated enough from terrible things that he does that he's not doing, he's doing them because it has worked or because he's not actually seeing the consequences. This is a guy who absolutely knows the consequences. He's manipulative, and he will break the worst of barriers to get what he wants, and that's all he cares about. Yeah, they probably could have been done without the rape scene, but that definitely sets a tone for that particular character. And yeah, there is some language in the book that is a little rough around the edges that doesn't necessarily need to have been written the way that it was. I think I had a similar gripe about, heck, even our last book, Stormfront, where there's just like a little too much emphasis on the horny that didn't need to be in there. You can show attraction and stuff without being like, well, damn, like I noticed her and it's because she made my dick hard. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that information, but it is what it is. It wasn't my favorite part of the book, but I think that rape scene did have more of a purpose than just to say he's evil. It was, I'm evil, and it's to the core. Like, this is not a redemption story. There's nothing that's going to explain away that I am a shitty sociopathic person. Yeah. And considering the blurred lines between reality and the digital in this book, I think it needed something that was strictly, in the real world to really solidify that for this character. There could have been other ways to do it, but that he chose was highly effective, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that scene in particular where, he gets off on not necessarily the act of the rape, but the fact that he can control somebody is something that I think is needed for his character. It very explicitly emphasizes the fact that Greg likes to control people and that he's good at it.
Yeah, that's another good point. And again, there might have been other ways to do it, and it is unsettling to read if you aren't a sociopath. But I think that's kind of the point. And there is language that could definitely have been done different ways and still gotten the same point across, absolutely. And yeah, via Drake, it does show how like our language has shifted just in the last 15 years, which is kind of amazing when you think about it, but
Yeah, it's definitely a hard to swallow scene. And I think Suarez knew that when he wrote this book. Which is why we only get the one scene.
Yeah.
Which is probably good, right?
Yeah, there absolutely did not need to be more of that.
Sorry about the phrasing, guys.
Yeah.
I didn't think that one
through. B.S. Drake, this is a reminder, you're the one who went there.
Usually, what the fudge, Skype? Just stop.
What did Skype do this time?
It was like, oh, do you want to join the call? Like, no, I'm in the call. Knock it off. Anyway, usually I'm proud of my puns, but this time I'm a little ashamed. So,
oh man, as you should be.
Yeah.
Somebody needs. It's too bad we can't do gifts in the chat. Somebody needs to do that shame bell from Game of Thrones. Just shame.
Oh, hey, Alpac fan, I'm glad you joined. I'm pretty sure you're the one.
It's been a
Alpac,
while.
I think you're the one who suggested Demon to me way back in the day. So glad you're here.
Yeah, if you have any thoughts on the book at all, we probably discussed the most like uncomfortable scene just now, so we can skip that and move on to anything else you have to talk about. Oh man, I don't remember getting that particular recommendation from you, but I'm LPAC, but I wouldn't be surprised if like we ever talked about books that this would come up, because it does seem right up your alley based on what I know about you. Let's see. Here's a question I have. What did you that I want to pose to everybody? What did you think was the most unrealistic thing that the demon accomplished in this book? What was the most unrealistic thing that the demon was able to accomplish?
I don't know. I think that's a hard question for today because things have changed in terms of cybersecurity. Like, I don't think the demon in today's world could gain access to corporations as easily as it did in the book. But I don't know.
No, but that's a legitimate answer though, is that at least in today's world, that is a lot more unrealistic. Is like, because in 2006, yeah, cybersecurity was a thing, but you remember the internet was only like 20 years old at that point.
Yeah. I would say alternate answer for that for me is I would have liked to see people be put in charge of writing new demon tasks the further along it got. Is I could see the demon in Sobel predicting things to an extent, but the further and further and more complicated the organization got, like, I just can't see that a if-then computer program was capable of predicting what would happen, and in a correct order of sequences.
See, that's the part that was actually going to be exactly my answers. That last little bit right there is that it was able to predict based on an if-then like flowchart. And I get that this is more of a web, but there was an order to these things that needed to happen. And like the dude was a genius. He wasn't like precognizant about like being able to like account for every little thing on a particularly on a global scale. So setting this up, unless there's something later, like in the next book, that, like you said, sets a foundation for this going forward, is the assumption that this is going to happen so completely and so quickly that people aren't going to be able to adapt to it or potentially subvert this program in any way. And I don't know, that part seems a bit flawed to me, but maybe that's its undoing. I don't know. I don't really get to see that in this book.
Yeah, there could definitely be a lot of behind the scenes things going on. Like V.S. Drake said, there's a lot of just enough storytelling here.
Yeah, and Pat Fan was right. Like, there's probably a lot that's just not explained explicitly. I was just wondering if there's anything in particular, since while I am competent, I am in this particular group the least technically inclined, especially knowing Alpac and VS Drake as I do. I thought maybe you guys might have more of an insight, but it seems like I didn't miss that much. So
I will say one thing I wanted to come into the book that doesn't is the those fighting against the demon to create false news in attempts to get the demon to trigger events falsely, but that never came up.
Yet. Well, and I think you bring up a good point though there, that there were, I don't know, it felt like, and I think I mentioned this earlier, that the antagonist or the demon just kind of held all the cards, and every person who was on the opposite side of the demon, I don't know if you can really call them protagonists because there's so many of them, but anybody fighting against the demon was just so reactionary. Like, it was so little was being done to counteract the demon, and what little was being done is just by basically one person, and then the rest are just like, oh no, there's another thing that we have to react to, instead of trying to actually, like you said, at least take a stab at like getting ahead of this thing.
Yeah, Alpac, I definitely think you're right about like everybody served its purpose. We saw the more should we say fragrant characters to join the demon because they were the ones that made the big impacts that make stories. But there's definitely like there's the one scene where they assemble the gun, right? And each person brings a part of the gun to assemble. So there's obviously a bunch of people who have extremely minor roles. You know, they're level 1 characters who just go and grab this part and bring it here, or go and tell what's her face to make this news story and stuff like that.
Oh, Angie, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually a really cool point there. The MMOR, what did you think of the MMORPG style society? Like, I think it's basically it's like societal structure by algorithm, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, let's make that a formal question too, but I like it. I think it's a cool concept, and it would be really neat if we had something like that in the real world. Like the closest thing we've had is like Ingress and stuff. Ingress, Pokemon Go, things like that, where it takes a video game and kind of makes you do it in the real world. What I don't think belongs in the story though is like that would not be relatable to everybody that the demon recruits. You know, like the Angies of the story would probably be like, I don't give a shit about some fantasy role that you're assigning me. Like, just let me do my job. I would be way into it if I joined the Demon Task Force. I'd be like, yeah, level 38 assassin. Yeah, that's me. Yeah. I'm so cool. Oh, sorry, Alpac. I haven't read book 2 yet.
Yeah, that would be. There are people I think that would absolutely take to it, and there are others that wouldn't actually care. Like, but I think at a certain point, that's part of the reason why this program is doing certain parts by force. Is it's trying to set up a system that will make everybody care, because there are, literal life-threatening consequences if you don't care. Which presumably up front is death, but it could also be down the road financial ruin or not fitting into the new society, which, as humans, we're kind of prone to trying to do when it's the base level for how we interact with each other. And if there's an alternative, yeah, there's always going to be people who resist it. But if there's no alternative, I think eventually, I don't know, most people would probably settle into it, especially if the murdery stuff disappears.
Yeah. I mean, you get like to kind of circle back to Ready Player One. Ready Player One was a video game, but you had the teachers that had avatars in the world. You had the other people like teachers who had avatars. Not everybody did the fantasy aspect in Ready Player One. So I would assume, like Alpaca's saying, book 2 does do something to link that up. But as far as book 1 goes, the only thing we see is that Loki's a level 40 sorcerer, and the guy who wakes up, was it Seebeck? Detective Seebeck?
Yeah.
Yeah. The guy who wakes up Seebeck is 7 times stronger than him, and stuff like that.
All right, so we got a question from VS Drake about what do we think of the demon's weapon against companies, and how do we think that will come into play in the future? What do you think, Adam?
Are we specifically talking about like the whole it holds people's stocks ransom, essentially, where it's like, I'm going to tank your stocks if you don't do what I say?
I thought that's what he was referring to. He was referring to VS Drake. If you can clarify for us, no. So which weapon? Then it's either, because I don't remember anything specifically. A signal that they discovered. Why am I blanking on this? Are you talking about the program that just like infiltrates any given business and can access all their records? Or they found out you could put in a tax code and company code. The signal was for the
the thing where they can destroy the company if you just send a signal.
Okay, duh, Jesus.
And they're worried about, like, the US is worried that Russia is going to do it to them if they don't secure it right away and stuff like that. That's that's interesting.
I think that's going to wind up being a kind of conduit for making the business world, which would not typically engage with this new type of society that's based on games. I think it's basically going to be used to force them to engage with it. Like, engage with it or we destroy you. You don't necessarily have to be good with it, just engage with it,
Yeah.
And so like it's presumably going to give them a reason to leave the demon alone and let it do what it's going to do without trying to wield any corporate, political, or other kind of power that these companies potentially could. That is, I agree, LPEC Phantom that is probably one of the more unrealistic things now that I remember that. Well, especially nowadays, because there's nothing that is, when companies start making a certain amount of money in particular, there's nothing that's not backed up so that it can't recover from like a single keystroke, essentially. you know.
And I have a feeling that, like, if a company discovered the threat looming, that they would be pretty quick to come up with a countermeasure.
Well, just speaking from like what I know about, and I work for a nonprofit organization, and like even they have their stuff, like their financials are like completely isolated from everything else, and it's aside from like allocation of funds for certain things, but as far as like its storage and its ability to track records for it, like it has its own server. and that you'd have to basically physically infiltrate. So being able to do that for a company, sure, but for like every company that like you even virtually touch, I don't think that's reasonable. And that's coming from what I know about a tiny NPO, let alone like a Fortune 500.
Yeah. Let me pitch a topic. I haven't in a while here. Oh man, don't you hate it when you're like, oh, I know what I want to say, and then you go to say it, and you're like, what was I gonna say?
my brain can't mouth.
Oh, so right after Detective Seaback, I always mix up Sobel and Seaback. It's
Yeah.
Seaback, right?
Yeah,
Detective
Seaback's the
Seaback.
detective.
Okay.
Sobel's the mad genius slash demon creator.
um, so Detective Seaback gets put on death row, and then they find out the demon hoax isn't really a hoax, and they decide to let him die anyway. And conversely, further along in the story, they decide to kill innocent bystanders in order to let Greg go. Do you think where would you, if you were the major or whoever was making those calls, where would you have drawn the line on what was right?
I mean, if I was the major, military thinking tends to be fairly black and white, very utilitarian, and those moves technically make a utilitarian sense. And like, so that kind of seems in line with the character. Me personally, I would have been, well, I don't know. I would have at least been like, is there, and like tried to found a way to get around killing Seaback, because like that's the one I wouldn't have personally been able to pull the trigger on, and I probably would have been pissed enough at like a character like Greg to be like, okay, you guys let him go. I'm gonna take care of this myself. You know, especially if I have like the military power of the major. Like I was like, I'll take the hit for this one, and the world can be safe. You know, like I would rather do that personally, but like I don't I don't know. It seemed in line with the character that was created to make that decision. You know, to have made what he did. Do I agree with either of them? Absolutely not. What about you?
um, I kind of felt a little bit different than you. I understood um letting Seabeck die. But I really think killing burn victim Barbie was going way too far.
See, I would say I'm much more appalled by the latter decision. I really am. I would not have personally been like morally okay with it, but I don't know that I would have been able to overpower the, like, I don't know what the consequences are going to be. I couldn't react to it. Plus they had a time limit on making that decision, right? Effectively, like it obviously
For which one?
for Seabeck.
Well, yeah. I mean, he
So
had an
like
appointment.
not knowing that like with having no other option, it's one that like if I was gun to my head, forced to make a choice, I would have to go utilitarian. But if I didn't have that and there was, I would be trying to find every other way around it. And that, when I was reading this book, it felt like they kind of gave into that a little too easy. But that was just a feeling. I don't have enough technical expertise to know if they made the right choice there, you know?
Yeah. So I think it's a tough call, but I don't know. I think if you're conflicted about something, do what you think is right, right?
Oh, that's what that is. I keep hearing this rumbling, and at first I thought it was thunder, but I forgot that. No, sorry. It's not that. It just kept going. Anyway, may or may not be tired today.
As am I. As am I.
All right. I don't think I have anything else to say as far as the specifics of the moral quandary that they could put into. I think I'm waiting for a lot of this stuff that, like, I'm really glad this is a 2-book series because there's a lot of stuff that I gave it a lot of leeway because I'm like, there's got to be more to this. There's no way this is too good not to have some resolution to it. And that was one of those things that I think that moral quandary, I think, is something that's going to be faced again and again, and eventually there is going to be more of a desirable resolution to it. But that's just my guess anyway. But maybe I'm getting my head ahead of myself with predictions.
Yeah. Yeah, we changed for those commenting about the stream quality, we changed brands for the stream.
Yeah, we did. We got rid of the alleged plagiarizers. So yeah, I'm glad that it's actually a relief to know that we're doing that much better on the other side. I mean, I'm technically in the chat, but I am not actually watching our streams, so thanks for letting us know that it's definitely better, and good decision all around. I mean, we had some issues getting things set up, but pretty sure we had similar issues the first time we got set up on our first episode or two as well, and that was even with like doing test runs. So
there's a lot going on. There's definitely a ton of variables to check boxes on. So
Christmas party goodies in the oven. Can you share, please?
Yeah, I'm really hungry.
I want goodies. Actually, I probably don't need it. I've had a lot of goodies this weekend, and I need to hold off for Christmas now. So what did we think about the tech in this book?
That's a good question.
I'm putting that in chat.
Yeah, I really liked this might be biased because as the man behind the scenes, and I know very well, audio work is very there's a lot to go on with audio work, but I thought it was really cool what Sobel was able to do with the demon speaking to people and putting the voice like in the room with you instead of it just coming from a speaker. It was like, it's right behind you, it's right in front of you. That stuff I thought was really, really cool. I also enjoyed the fabricated weaponry that the demon was able to place in people's hands. The wearable computer was cool. I feel like that's just a cell phone these days, but back in the day, 2006, that definitely wasn't the case. So I thought it was cool how they were like, yeah, there's this belt and it's a computer and it powers things for 3 days. And that was pretty neat. Neat concept before the time of today's smartphones. So throw it over to you now. I think I've talked long enough.
So all ninja bikes aside, that doesn't. I'm not even going to try and count that one. But I actually liked that they leaned into the self-driving cars and stuff. Actually seemed very realistic, and we're actually heading towards that. You know, like taking that, and I thought that was interesting because it's, you know, like a lot of the stuff that you picked out, and even the 3D printer and the HUD glasses that V.S. Drake is pointing out, they're things that at the time, yeah, they were on the horizon, but they didn't exist, but they're more or less a reality now. And like in one way or another. I mean, we don't have belts, but we have watches, you know, and stuff.
Smart watches and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those. One of those.
One of these. Oh wait, one of these.
I actually thought one of the more interesting, though, technologies for me was actually used in some of like the well, in that ability to transition to like create essentially that augmented reality. So its use of MMORPGs to create essentially a dark net in which people would uh, have these missions, be able to bring that into the real world and have this actual alteration happen to their lives based on this, you know, game that they were playing, and using the darknet. And I thought that was kind of that seamless, the technology that allowed for that seamless move between between the real world and the darknet that it created was really interesting because while sinister, like it would be, you know, we do kind of do that a bit in real life. I think the closest we really come is, you know, probably streaming. um, Complete the missions, get enough subscribers and followers, but and then get the monies, which we but
Too real. Too real.
but to have that happen in real time, it was cool, scary but cool. Just like I thought, like it takes what we deal with augmented reality, with like you mentioned, Pokemon Go and Ingress and stuff like that, and then takes it to the next level, which I think is very possible that it could happen, especially with the rise of things like uh, cryptocurrency. But you know, we'll see about that. But that was probably my favorite little bit.
Yeah. I also like the it's barely touched on, but the demon creates currency for its followers.
Yeah, yeah, it's within the dark. Well, and I kind of was half alluding to that with the, you know, the dark net that it does create, and that's part of what allows it to work seamlessly and under the radar. It's, you know, and it does just work for them, and it's something that they can turn into something tangible, which really, when you think about it, it's just a hyper specific for certain people cryptocurrency. You know.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of do that to an extent, you know, when you earn like tokens for stuff, and then you eventually can cash it out into like real world stuff. Except this is much more viable because it has much greater resources, and you don't have to earn 10,000 coins to get a $2 gift card to Amazon.
Def. Um. Okay. What did you What did you think Sobel's motivations were, considering this was all happening after his death?
Um, that's the hardest bit for me to suss out, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this when I was reading the book. I think it's something that he was just didn't like the way society worked, thought he had a better way to do it, and I have to imagine there's probably a minor amount of mental health issue going on there. That, to what extent, I don't know. And I don't know, I really couldn't quite figure it out, like what the motivation was, other than like, because there's no real eco component to it yet. There's just the, I vaguely see injustice in the world. I think I have a way to make things more like makes sense to me. And and I'm a genius, so if it makes sense to me, then the whole world can benefit from this.
Yeah.
Like that's the best that I've got out of this, but that seems too simple, and I'm really hoping more comes out in the next book about that. Because I want there to be more to it than that. I really do. But that's all I could really suss out.
Yeah, for me, I took it as like he knew that the world was corrupt and needed to change, and that it had grown stale. But he also knew that if he acted while he was alive, he would lose everything personally. So I think the choice he made was to allow people to choose for themselves, really. Because right, you have the choice to follow the demon or die most times, but you can choose to not do what the demon is telling you to do.
Yeah, and I would tend to mostly agree with that. I just want to address what B.S. Drake said about One Eye explaining that, like, Sobel found that democracy couldn't survive in a fast-emerging, fast-paced tech space. But I was trying to go into the why of that specific statement. Like, this doesn't work, but why do I have to, like, why go into, like, an algorithm-based, and, yeah, he used games to figure out and test things to see what would work and what wouldn't. And eventually that became, if you test that way, especially if you're dying, like how else are you going to restructure society but in the way that you've tested it? So that works for him because that's what he lived his life doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm just hoping for more detail into the why. That's all, like the why of the why. Like, we know what caused the initial thought is just why set it up. Why is it set up like this? And why yeah, we know V.S. Drake. We'll read the second book, we swear.
We need more people in chat who haven't read the second book.
Be like us.
Yeah, it's definitely on the list. I'm gonna read Cytonic next, and then probably Freedom TM, and then our next book for the show, Sufficiently Advanced Magic. That's my order of reading currently.
I honestly will probably start listening to it tonight, considering that, like, maybe not tonight. I'm freaking exhausted, so probably tomorrow morning. All right. Speaking of which, like, I know that we've had a bit of a wonky set of, like, times here, but I think we should probably move, unless somebody has, like, a specific thing. Why don't we move into final thoughts? And I don't even want to do predictions via straight because we're gonna read the next book and spoilers.
Half our conversation base has read the second book, so
yeah, let's not do that. We will read the second book. We just don't want to do predictions coming from you. Fine, we'll do our predictions. Chat, leave us alone.
I predict that I'm going to read the second book. Just kidding.
So what are your predictions then, Adam?
So kind of like what I hinted on earlier, I think the demon is going to try and shape its new society. So in some way, I think people are going to start having more of an influence on the direction the demon takes. So maybe even that goes as far as the demon becomes hands off or just stops existing in general because its routines are done. But I think we'll see some sort of shaping happen instead of the current of let's take over and then worry about things. That's really all I've got.
Okay, so I am predicting that the demon continues to fly under the radar long enough to essentially become like the equivalent of like an actual country, but somehow the world over, where it's gonna, keep building off of this MMORPG. And maybe I'm getting a little World of Warcrafty here, but like I think there will effectively be an economy that it'll set up, maybe even a hierarchy or political system to a degree, and that is what is going to want. And when it gains enough power, it's going to try to assert that, or enough stability, it's going to try to assert that on more and more of the world. Do I think it eventually gets stopped? Yes. Because it's predictions, I won't hedge my bets and say, well, it might just. I don't think it's ever going to completely go away. I think it's going to continue to exist on some level, but I don't think it's going to achieve its full goal of like a total new world order.
Okay, interesting.
I don't know. I'm getting the vibes that this isn't a like total resolution in one way or the other. NWA. Not sure what you mean there, VS Straight, huh? Oh, New World. Yeah, it's not NWO.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what NWA is. Northwest Allies. The New Wang Association. Yeah, that's NWO.
New World Anarchy.
Something that's actually not inaccurate for what it is. But
I don't think it's anarchy by any means. It's a extremely controlled society, if anything. But it was fun.
I guess I was just thinking about Greg and just like that's basically he's like, although he does punches. All right, VS Drake, you might be more tired than the rest of us. All right, so final thoughts on this book?
Final thoughts, yeah. Would recommend. It was totally dope. There's characters to love, there's characters to hate. The plot is compelling. The idea behind it is enticing. What do you got?
I also would highly recommend it for anybody. Like, this is something that is, while it is heavily tech based, I think anybody who likes science fiction in general, or even thrillers really with like even a techno twist, would enjoy this book. But I would also, having read only the one half of it, recommend that you only get into this if you're willing to commit to both books. Like, because I'm just sitting here, there's too much unresolved. I'm like, this just needs to be one book. I'm going to read it all because I can't leave it like this. And I just wouldn't recommend somebody being into it just for the one. The only other thing I would say is don't expect this to be a character-heavy book. It is very much a story-heavy one. So if you are in it for connecting with the characters, it's not that you can't. It's just not going to be the most fulfilling for you. But again, I'd still recommend it to like basically anybody who likes sci-fi.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, this the story does a good job of showing, not telling. So.
Yeah, well, hopefully it does a little more telling in the next book though, because like it's fine as a build-up, but if that's all there is, I'm gonna be pissed. Almost got it. We're done. Never got it.
What?
I don't know. I'm tired. Leave me alone. All right. All right. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. Let's go ahead and roll into our book plans for the getting out of here stuff. It looks like we have a winner of our vote. Yeah, no blue books on this series. It looks like we have a winner of our votes. It's going for January 29th on 2022. We are going to be doing The Odyssey by Homer for our classics week, and that's about as classic as it gets right there. Going all the way back to the Greek classics. That is to be preceded by Sufficiently Advanced Magic by Andrew Rowe Reed on January 15th, 2022. Why don't you go ahead and get into our plugs then, Adam?
Yeah. By the way, super excited about Sufficiently Advanced Magic for a month out here.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my all-time faves. You guys should totes check it out. They just came out with book 3 too, so it's a good time. Good time to jump in the series. There's more books to read.
Just let it roll straight through to book 3.
That may or may not be how that ended up on the list for the vote. Is I saw book 3 was out and I was like, oh, I gotta get these guys to read book 1. Anyway, Odyssey 2. Super excited for that one. Never read it. Excited for the first time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting considering the fact that my English course when I was in college was was actually a Greek classics English course. So I may or may not have had to have written a 5-page essay on just the Odyssey, in particular the symbolism, but. Haha, classic mistake. Way to go, VS Drake. All right,
plugs. Check out the links under the video. You'll see some things like YouTube and Patreon. We have a YouTube channel. We post all our videos there. It's cool. It's nerdy. You should check it out. Also, Patreon. I talked about it earlier, but it just takes $2 and you get to vote on one of 3 books, and the winner gets to be the next book that we read. So if you want to read something specific, become a Patreon and then suggest a book to us, and then we'll put it on the list, and then you can vote for it, and then maybe it'll get picked.
Yep, it directly supports, as our moderator there said, it directly supports the show too, and you can get amazing content a little bit early. Like our Christmas special, which should be out for our Patreon subscribers, and will be available to the rest of you come Christmas time. Come join us for book list, presents.
Find out what we got for presents.
I wonder what it could be.
Yeah, I mean, really, I'm in the
It
dark.
could be anyone at one of anything.
Yeah,
You'll never know. Come join us for that, and and as we come up with more stuff, we will be probably doing more of these in the future, where we will have content initially available only to Patreon subscribers. It will come to others, but if you want to be the first to see what we got to offer, Patreon's a great place to support us and help us do that, because we've absolutely loved doing this for you, and it was a really good time, and I'd love to keep doing stuff like that. I don't know about you, Adam. It was a good time. Did you have any more plugs, or are we moving into our themes for coming weeks?
Yeah, join us on our socials if you want more information about DM's Table or the 800's. On Facebook, we're at the DM's Table, and on Twitter, we're at DM's Table. And if you join us there and you're like, man, these guys got a lot of cool things to say, or you're just like, man, I really wish I could talk to specific people exactly all the time, then you should join our Discord. Hit us up on Facebook or Twitter and we'll get you our link. The Discord talks about all things nerdy, not just books. We talk about D&D. 3D printing has been, a really popular topic as of late. But yeah, there's tons of nerdy stuff, so come check it out.
And we're also happy to add to it if there's something that you want to nerd out about. There's plenty of us that are just there and love to learn about everybody else's hobbies. So don't feel like just because it's not on there that you wouldn't be able to throw it out there and, gain some discussion and new friends who are into your hobby as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And our motto applies there too. Be nice or fuck off.
It especially applies there.
Very applicable to our Discord server.
Right. And going forward, though, we do have a couple themes because our next book we're voting for is going to be in February. It's actually going to be February 12th, I believe. And love is in the air. Get us your suggestions for romance novels. Those are fictional romance novels, whether it be the smutty ones that your mom reads on the plane ride to grandma's house for Christmas, or if it's something more classic like Jane Eyre. Whatever you have, if you have a favorite romance novel, let us know what it is. And then for the remainder of February, I did enjoy reading from our Black author list last year. So for our next theme in February, we will be doing another Black authors list. If you have suggestions, let us know. Otherwise, we will pull from the extensive list we created last year. And there were a lot of interesting books on there, so I'm looking forward to reading whatever we get from that. So remember, romance books, and if you have any books by Black authors that you want to suggest, toss them our way for February.
Yeah. Otherwise, thanks for joining us today. It was a good conversation about a good book.
Yep, and thank you for for sitting through our technical bullshit. It was a fun read and a fun chat. And otherwise, we'll see you next book.
Yeah. See you later. I'm going to get to reading right now. That's a lie. I'm not actually reading this book. It's totally
Thaddeus and the Livestock. But the terrible thing about this horror was that it was very